Welcome to Sailing into Nirvana. This episode is about gaining confidence through your knowledge, and we use the books that I have on board that I've been using for years. And this is the Handbook of Sailing, Bob Bond. In this episode, we're going to cover a few things. Now that you have a boat or you're thinking about buying one, then this episode is for you. Let's get right into it. We could read a lot about, in the first part of the book, we could get a lot of knowledge about what we need on the boat. But the dream is cruising, actual sailing. And so we want to just flip right over to that chapter, and let's just take a look at cruising. Most people are starting with a smaller boat, maybe a 22 or 25 footer. Not as much amenities. And as always, it's what you want to do, how much time you have to do it. If you're going to be sailing on the weekends or all week, if you're in the lake, if you're at the bay, you want to go on the coast. So you'll have to keep that in mind. Let's say that cruising could be defined as you have to go somewhere. You're going to cruise to get there. You're not going to go fast. I have friends who would like to go sailing, and I've taken sailing, and so they can experience it. Their idea is not so much learning how to sail, but experiencing the sail. So can you imagine going out on a lake and everybody's running around? They may go out for 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, and rush right back and go home and go do something else. Well, sailing is different because we're going to enjoy the ride. It's not fast. It can be, but if you want to be the kind of sailor that joins the sailing club and goes on regattas, and you have a 4-man crew, and you push the boat to its limits, and you get out in some good wind, that's all well. But the majority of people, that's kind of steers them away from learning it or buying a sailboat. That's a lot of pressure. It is a lot of fun. I've been in my family in those situations, races and things as a kid led up to now. However, the kid has a lot more energy. Maybe we're in midlife and we have the money to buy a boat and we want to settle down and sail. Okay, so here's where we're at. We're back at cruising. We're going to go from A to B slowly, predictable, enjoyable. So, starting to cruise, we get the boat, we get out there, and we say, let's look for a weather window. My very first thing. Now, if I have a 22 a boat, a trailer boat, or a swing keel boat, or a 25 fixed keel boat, or like this, a 30 fixed keel boat, or even larger. So the keels all matter because they have different ballasts, different handling characteristics, and different places you can go or you can and cannot go on the water because of the keel. So for example, my parents had a swing keel. It was like a 24-foot venture, and one of my jobs was to raise and lower the keel. So we would come up on a shallow, or we would want to beach it, and so I'd get my orders to go down below and start cranking the keel up. That was real fun. We got out, we swam, we did all that. If that's the kind of lifestyle you want, then that kind of boat would be better for you. That's a smaller boat. It's got an outboard motor, if you've ever dealt with those, if you prefer those. And so the next size up would be a fixed keel, mid-sized pocket cruiser. And that one, it's going to have, let's say, a 3.5 foot keel. And you're going to need to stay in a good 6 feet of water and anchor and sail in those or deeper waters. And so you're not going to be getting up close to beaches and all that. You would have to have a dinghy or a portable raft or a paddleboard or something where you can get out and just go right on over there. Maybe there's a camp out, maybe there's a public restroom, maybe there's something you need. And then you can just get right back on after you anchored properly in a spot where you knew was safe and the water was safe to anchor there and not drag, and your boat will be there when you get back. So, get into a much larger boat, the need for those kind of things, like let's say the 30s and up, we have a proper head, facilities, a galley, the Salon, and we can come inside and have these amenities and maybe not need to go anywhere. We don't need to go to the shore. We could just anchor out for days. And comes to mind on that is, do we have enough power in our battery banks? Do we have a solar system? All this. So I'm going to skip right into cruising right here. And you can see, here's the layout of the basic cruiser. So that's what you're looking at. You're looking at, here is where I'm going to imagine all the fun goes down. Here's where my life happens. You're going to need to provision your boat with the food that you need, refrigeration, ice boxes, ice makers. You're going to need to make sure that if you're going to go out, that your motor is prepped, running, before your guests get there. You've already tested it. You don't want anything to stop your trip out. That's bad rapport for your guests. They want to come out. They want to have a good time. And so we're the captain. We have to make these things happen. We have to think about them before they happen. So that's kind of why we study books like this. We look at it and we envision ourselves, and that's where the dream goes down. And then we kind of glean through here, and we could talk about provisioning. We could talk about more on the layout, the galley. And so your internal layout has to be comfortable for you and your crew, your first mate. So you want to say, let's make accommodations for each person in advance. You want them to feel at home. This is cruising. So if someone just got a life jacket on and jumped on a boat and ran out and did some tubing, they don't have to bring much. So you have to think, what do they need to bring? Normally, the rule on the boat was BYOB, bring your own suntan lotion, bring your own towel. Okay? So that goes true, but on a sailboat, a cruising boat, well, there may be more things you can do. You could bring board games. You could sit in the salon and play board games. You could barbecue. You could have different barbecue items on the menu. You could have a margarita machine. You could have a lot of things that you can't have on a smaller powerboat. Reminding yourself that you want to make this voyage memorable for them. That this is a dying art to us captains to make sure that the guests will want to come back and tell their friends, and you know they're going to get on Facebook and put all the photos on there and videos from their venture, and you want that to be a good one. So we go through here and we say, what do I need in the galley? Okay, basic minimum stuff. A lot of 22-footer boats, you could get the propane stove, right? You could bring in bottled water. You could have an ice chest, and you could go kind of camping style like that. There's nothing wrong with that. You could upgrade to maybe, if you had a battery bank big enough where you could run an inverter, you could get that and a cooktop, let's say a cooktop 2-burner, 1-burner stove top where you could put a pan on that and go electric. Perfect for that. You can do other things. I put an air fryer in here. It's a double convection oven air fryer. That works well for me because I make more elaborate recipes from the galley. But if you just want to do bacon and egg, hamburger, a stir fry, stuff like that, a one-pot meal, you bring in a cast iron skillet and you're good to go. You want a coffee pot, coffee maker, kettle, something to that nature. It's always good to have a few options when your guests come in and they are kind of like, well, this sailing is going kind of slow, and they're not used to that. And so you have, okay, here is some reading material. Here is, let's make some tea. Let's make some coffee. Let's make something for them to make them feel comfortable. Okay, this may be delegated. You may have a bigger crew. You may have a first mate and a second mate, and everybody will know their roles to make it enjoyable, because that's the key to getting people more interested in this kind of lifestyle. So we just can't be always thinking about ourselves in that regard. We want to make sure we make it enjoyable. So we could have our internal layout set up just so for our guests to arrive. We could have the galley provisioned, right? We could make sure our batteries are charged. We have the navigation area over here. We want to make sure that we have solar, it's charging. We want to make sure there's no problems with that. The motor starts, the starter turns the motor over. We have electricity. all that first. You have radios, you have different things to check and test out. And then you come into your main cabin, your salon area, you have your head, and you have to care for these. So we're going to go, and every winter we're going to clean the roof from any kind of grime or mold or anything that we see. We're going to dust and re-oil all of the teeth annually. And it's usually here in the winter months where we're not out all that. Well, I might be on anchor, we might be in the marina. So we want to get all that done. We want to start processing that. By all means, bring in your fishing gear and your tackle and get all of that set up where you don't have to spend an hour messing with it and away from sailing and your guests and all that. We make sure, if you have a head aboard, make sure your tanks are dumped at the dump station. Make sure it's ready for them. If you can't be, have a backup plan. Have a stand-up camping style toilet, or one of those chemical styles that are all contained. Perfectly fine. Most people are happy to be out with you on the water, so they're not going to complain too much about this kind of facilities. Another thing we have to think about, because we're going to go cruising here. This is the dream. We have to make sure our lines are running rigging. All of the lines on the boat have to be inspected and checked, and we have to check the standing rigging, all of the stainless steel lines that hold the mast up. I'm going to go through the terminology here. We have the backstay, we have the forestay. Okay, those can be adjusted, and you can feel the tension on them, and so you want to make sure annually you check those over and get the right tension. On the mast, it's typically going to have a spreader or two, and we're going to have our shrouds on each side. Those have turnbuckles. Those need to be adjusted. I can't tell you how many times I go and look at boats and their shrouds are just loose. And I'm thinking, well, a big storm or something, even at the marina, may demast the boat because one of those are loose and snapped or rusted or what have you. So once we checked out the stays, then on the standing rigging, then we start to look at the sheets. We looked at the jib sheet or Genoa sheet. We looked at the main sheet. We looked at the cleats. We looked at the winches. And we don't want to not do this every time before we go out, because once we're cruising, we get out there, motor out into the bay or the lake, and realize that this main winch is frozen and I didn't check it. Now we have to abort the voyage. There's no sailing. Maybe pull the Genoa out if it uses a different winch. On a smaller boat, of course, you have to have your life safety gear. But on a smaller boat, you may or may not have lifelines on stanchions on each side of the boat. So you've got to prepare to have your safety gear. If you have the lifelines, that's a little bit of more safety, and you want to keep those up for people that are your guests that don't know how much balance they have. They might not be all that balanced or good on the water, and so you don't want to spook them and have them fall off the boat and have that problem. Once we've checked out the stays, the shrouds, once we've checked out our sheets and our winches and our cleats, we're going to check the foredeck. We're going to check in the aft deck and make sure everything around us in the cockpit is just fine. We can look at the cockpit and we can say, do we have a tiller? Do we have a binnacle? Do we have a steering wheel? Do we have electronics? Make sure all those are working. So this is all the prep, and then now you're ready to start the motor out, and raise those sails. Okay, I know on a larger boat it might be intimidating, and that seems like a lot of work to do, but once you have checked it and you make it automatic by when you get to the boat, you check it and do a walk around and look for those key items that break or chafe or are loose, then it becomes easier the more times you do it, and then it becomes second nature. So now we're back to sailing into Nirvana again. The next thing we do is we're going to shape our course. We're going to plan our sail. We're going to make sure that we have a sail plan that's going to match what we want to do that day, the wind, the weather, our guests, itinerary. So I've had this happen. Here's an example. We're going to go sail. We're going to sail between noon and 6. They need to get there early and get ready to sail. And I give about 45 minutes to an hour to get everybody accommodated to the boat and walking on it and everything. Find a place where they like to sit. They like to talk about their day. They like to talk about their week. We need to get all the conversations out and done before we have to focus and get out on the water. So that's always a good thing to do before you go out, is have that little extra time to get to know your guests, get to know how they feel that day. How they feel, how your crew feels, is going to be how you feel when you get back. You're going to be very tired if you had to do it all. So a bigger boat, like a 30-footer, 40-footer, is more intimidating because it's not single-handed very easily, can be, especially if it's set up for single-handing. But let's say your boat is just basic 3 winches, okay? You have to go up to the mast to raise the main and the jib, okay? So the difference is if you bought a boat with a furling head sail wrapped up, now you have that leaded back to the cockpit so you can unfurl the sail back in the cockpit. So you only have to go to raise the mast. You only have to go to the mast to raise the main. That's good. Still, you need someone steering the boat. So I have a brake on the binnacle where I can lock the steering wheel down. It's just a brake. And I can have, a good minute, 2 minutes, and I can get back as long as my course is not heading me into shallow water or something, or the waves are too much. But it's not as fun. It's better to have a first mate that can man the wheel. And so then learn how to swap. When they're comfortable, learn how to switch places and reverse the roles and then reverse them back. That'll help to gain more knowledge and confidence for them and feel safer and a better, more pleasant time. So we're going to shape that course. So what we're going to do is, once all the factors are in, the weather factors, we're going to run the same course on the same wind direction. So let me explain that. I'm going to take out of the marina here, it's going to be east. And I'm going to make sure that I point, and I'm going to have a southern wind in the sailing season, and I'm going to point to the starboard side into the southern wind. And I'm going to have my first mate hold the wheel, and I'm going to run to the mast and set the main. And as soon as the main is up and cleated off, then I can fall off to the port side, and now I can catch wind in the sails and let the main out to a point of sail where I'm going east. So that means I'm on a beam reach, and the wind, so I'm 90 degrees that way. Okay, that's the first step. And I do that the same every time, providing the wind is coming from that south direction. And it varies, maybe a little southeast, southwest, but it's usually in the sailing season there. Different times of year, different sail direction. Maybe I have to go and point into the wind, into the no-go zone, straight into the wind with motor power. And remember, you won't have any steering unless you have forward momentum over that rudder. So you have to have a little forward momentum with your motor to set the main. So that right there, if it's a north wind and I head into the north wind and I head into the north wind to the port side, same thing. Then I'm going to fall off to the starboard side, set the main, and I'm going and continuing my heading east. What do I do next? I'm going to get all the way to the other side, which is about 2 or 3 miles. I'm going to say, let's go one way or the other. Now we're going to turn and go either downwind, or we're going to turn this way and go into the wind. Total different technique. Here I'm going to be running downwind. And here I'm going to be sailing in attack. And I'm going to go at a point of sail about 30 to 60 degrees, depending on how much water I want to cover. And I'm going to sail in, and I'm going to tack into the wind. I'm going to beat into the wind. It's going to take me longer to travel the same distance because I've taken what would be a straight line and made a zigzag out of it, as opposed to going the other direction. So now I have to say, when I go, let's say I go downwind, because it's easy, okay? Now I'm going to go downwind. I'm going to get down to the other side or the bridge or what have you. And then I'm going to turn back to the port side, catch the wind, and be on, now I have to be on a beating path. I have to be going into the wind at 60 degrees. I have to be tacking. I can't get back unless I know how to tack or pull the sails down and turn on the motor. Okay, so if I did it the other way, then I'm going to do the hard part, beating into the wind first, and then it's going to be easy coming back. So what I'm saying here is I'm making a triangle, and I get back to where I started, and I pull the sails down, heading into the wind, motor right back into the marina. We get hooked up, get the lines hooked up, and it was a great, uneventful sail for my guests, crew, myself. So I'm going to do that maneuver every time. I'm going to get better at it. Things don't go as planned. Sometimes you lose that sheet and you got a sail flapping and you got to regroup. And so the better that you, the captain, and your first mate, and your guests know what to expect, and we're going to do it this way every time, then it becomes enjoyable. It becomes something that they'll tell everyone about and come back and do it again. And that makes it, it makes it more fun when more people are involved. We're not all pirates and loners out here doing it by ourselves, but it is up to us as the captain, be the captain, to make sure you're bringing that art and the enjoyment back to it by just taking a minute to learn some of these things, learn how to provision, learn how to do your inspections, test it all out, set it up, make a day of it, get ready, and we'll go sailing. See you out on the water.